What's up, YouTube? That's right, you are not seeing a ghost. Yes, I am back. Why did I disappear for 6 months and what have I been up to? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to give you an update as to what I think about the CCIE journey, as well as why I'm dedicating 2021 to being the year of Juniper. I'm throwing all of my effort into producing Juniper content for CBT Nuggets. So I'm going to tell you why I think that's a big deal, why I think there's an opportunity with Juniper certifications. We'll actually talk about the certification paths and how Juniper approaches certification. I think this is going to be some pretty interesting info. It's going to be a little bit different than other vendors that you may have run into in the past. So please stick around as you learn more about Juniper certification offerings, why I think it's a big deal that you get started with it, and how you can get started learning with Juniper devices. I'll see you there. Yesterday on my website, datanox.dev, I spun up a little blog that reintroduced myself back into the world and told you about what's been going on. Here's what really has been going on. My twins were born a little early, a little ahead of schedule, and it was, a pretty emotional time for myself and my family and everyone that was involved with that, but they were perfectly healthy. They were just small. We had to spend some time in the NICU to get them ready to come back out into the real world, and then very cool, CBT Nuggets actually offers paid paternity leave, so I had 6 weeks of paid paternity leave once they came home. So my time during that whole period was super limited. So for the past 6 months, I've been really focused on my family. That's what's really been going on there. And, I'll just tell you, when all of this was going on, my wife was super pregnant and she was having trouble getting around. And then I was watching my 2-year-old son because of quarantine. And then the babies were born and blah, blah, blah. All of that really boils down to, if I had a free second to work, I had to spend it I had to dedicate that time to CBT Nuggets. I literally did not have a free second to type up a blog post or a YouTube video or anything. And I know you're thinking, like, how could that be? How could you not spin up a 1-minute video just to tell us? It really was that limited. And I was doing things like working in the middle of the night because everybody was asleep. It was a wild time. But we're settled. I'm not getting a whole lot of sleep. That's to be expected. It's exhausting, but it's fun and it's amazing. And I love my family and I'm the luckiest person on earth. Starting next week, we start to really transition to going back to normal. Next week, or really the following week, will be the first time I will have had a 40-hour work week, assuming that nobody gets sick at daycare or anything. That will be the first time I've had a 40-hour work week, and that is just wild for me to think about. Since quarantine began, so over a year ago, that will be it's just mind-blowing to think. And then beyond that, it will also be the first time that I've only worked one job in years. I've worked 2 full-time jobs up until now, when I'm just full-time at CBT Nuggets, and it's just, I don't know what to expect. I'm a little stressed about it, but at the same time excited about it. Anyways, it's a cool time to look forward and think about what we've been through in the past year, and now look forward as we transition back into what may be a new norm, even though it kind of looks like the old way we did things, but it's a little bit different now because we're embracing working remotely more, and we're more conscientious about washing our hands and not sneezing in front of people. Anyways, so it's an exciting time for me. I'm so glad to be back here on YouTube. I will tell you right now, I will endeavor to release at least 1 video a week on YouTube, just updating you on what's going on with technology, what I'm working on, blah, 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 blah. That being said, I reserve the right to not, in case something goes on with my family, like somebody gets sick, which is very likely when you have 3 kids in daycare. But nonetheless, that is what I'm going to plan on doing. So I know you want to know where I am on the CCIE journey. I'm in the same boat that everybody else is. We're just waiting on the labs to reopen. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So here I am on the Cisco Expert Certifications exam page, and now the banner says, look at this, exam lab locations. Our CCIE lab locations are opening. Well, yeah, they are, just not in the United States. If I give this a click on Learn More, let's take a look at what's going on here. We see, well, actually, let me go back. Let's finish reading that because I think that's important. The health and safety of our customers, partners, employees continue to be our top concern. That's a very good thing. The reopening of our lab facilities will be based on local conditions, regulations, Cisco corporate, and medical guidance. Okay, makes sense. Let's click on learn more. So then I scroll down, and what I see here is that Richardson is still closed. So this is the part where I, as someone who may have been studying for this for an hour and may have thrown thousands of dollars into lab equipment to prep for it, starts to get a little frustrated because the silence is deafening. What specifically is the holdup when it comes to reopening the United States Lab Center? I don't know. I acknowledge that, you need to be careful. That's very important. But we do live in an era where Texas is basically getting wide open. I live within driving distance of Richardson, so I can drive there. I don't need to get on a plane, and I can prove that I've been vaccinated for over 2 months now. So, or almost 2 months, I should say. Maybe by the time you watch this, it'll be over 2 months. I got my second dose on April 1st. So what's the holdup? What specifically are you looking for to get Richardson open? Why is it not sufficient that I can prove that I'm vaccinated? I don't really know. I'm curious as to if we can get more information about when and why and what the holdup is here. It's not so much about me. I just feel for all the people who have been ready to take the exam in the United States and can't. Yeah, so I would love to take my CCIE Enterprise exam within the next 12 months for sure. I'm sure they are endeavoring and watching the situation closely, and they want to open this up in the most healthy and secure and safe way possible. But a status update I think would be great because it's been, over a year now since I declared that I was going to go for my CCIE. My study methods, my strategy for taking the exam, none of that has changed. One very cool thing I'll say is they did release the virtual machine that you can use in the lab center. So now you can actually spin up the virtual machine and practice along with that, actually get used to the commands or the operating system, the different terminals. I think that was really cool of them to do that. I also saw some Twitter posts where they're actually talking about a DNA Center Lite. I think that's really cool to help people study for the DNA Center examination, or at least the portions of it, get used to that familiar equipment. They indicated somewhere in the Twitter feed that the big thing with DNA Center, the assurance portion of it, is what is so compute heavy. It requires a huge amount of data resources. And of course, you'll have to store a tremendous amount of streaming telemetry. Then it goes through like AI processing and stuff like that to bring it to life. So they were exploring something like a DNA Center Lite. There's no ETA on that. There's even no guarantee that it'll happen. But it's cool that they are like exploring these challenges to taking in prepping for the enterprise exam. So kudos to y'all for at least hearing our feedback and making that come to life. Would love to hear a status update as to when these closed locations could be reopened and what it is that you're looking for. So yeah, that's cool. So that's where I am in the CCIE lab exam. It's waiting, and at some point I have to cut my losses and say it's time to move on with life and move on to the next things. And this kind of transitions me back into the next topic, which is about Juniper. So let's jump back on the main camera and talk about why I think Juniper is a big deal and why I'm dedicating myself to this in the year 2021. By the way, did you notice in that last screen I was working on the Brave web browser? I absolutely love that web browser. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that at the very end of this video. If you're interested in why I like the Brave web browser, I'll tell you at the very end, so stick around for that. Now I'm going to talk about Juniper and why I think Juniper is a big deal in the year 2021 and how you can get started working with it, why I think you should learn it, blah, 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 blah. Look, back when I was an IT consultant, we really only deployed 3 vendors worth of equipment. We did Juniper for enterprise everything. We loved Juniper for any medium or larger business that we deployed. There were several reasons for that I'm going to get into. We also deployed Unify and Meraki equipment for small businesses, and it's awesome. The SDN era, I really believe those 2 vendors really ushered in a huge entry-level way to get your foot in the door and experience SDN. I've covered Meraki and Unify quite a bit here on this YouTube channel, so you can circle back to that content if you're interested in that. Right now, I'm focused in on Juniper. Now, I'll also say we did some Palo Alto firewalls, too. Palo Alto is amazing. Anyways, Juniper. Why is Juniper such a big deal? Pilots measure their skill in hours flown. So when you're applying for a job or you're looking through job listings as a pilot, the job listing may say, you're required to have X 1,000 hours flying this type of aircraft. And when you apply, you have to say, like, I have flown, 25,000 hours in a Boeing 727 or something like that. That's not really unlike any profession, though, is it? When you look back and you say, well, I've spent how many thousands of hours on this vendor's equipment, on their command line, you got to say, like, okay, well, I'm very familiar with this type of equipment. I think we should start doing that. We should say I've spent this many thousands of hours on our equipment on our resumes. Anyways, I have spent the majority of my hours in my professional career on Juniper devices, and I was thrust into it in a very uncomfortable way. On my first day on the job, as a IT consultant, I was preparing for my CCNA. I was this close to finishing it up by taking ICND2. I walked through the door, and what I'm emailed a running config. I should say email. It was on a USB flash drive. I was handed a running config of a Cisco config and a text file, and then I was handed a stack of Juniper switches, and I was told, take that Cisco config and turn it into these Juniper switches. And that was how I was literally thrust into learning Juniper. And I'm really, really glad I did, because Juniper does things differently, and I really like the way they do things. You see, Juniper basically invented network automation. Like 20-something years ago, they invented a protocol called JunoScript, and their entire operating system is built on an XML API. Now, before I go any further, this is not a network automation video. This is not, you should learn Juniper because they do network automation. What I'm saying is that Juniper takes a very programmatic approach to how you do all things on the command line, and it's very logical. It flows very, very well and syntactically well. And the result of that is that many different organizations, especially big tech firms, I'm talking like Amazon, I'm talking Tesla, these huge providers, they all use Juniper equipment. Now, of course, they use other vendors' equipments too, but they use Juniper's equipment. Why? Because it's very easy to treat it in a programmatic nature and even do network automation within that. And they were able to, like the Teslas of the world, the Amazons of the world, they were able to recruit Juniper employees to stand up their environment very, very quickly. If you actually get on LinkedIn and search through well, who is really a network engineer at Amazon, or who is really a network engineer at Tesla or something like that, you'll find out a lot of these people have histories coming from Juniper networking. They've worked for Juniper for 10, 15, 20 years, and that's really what's going on in these big tech firms. Now, that's not to say they don't use other vendors. They do, but Juniper is there. That's what's going on. And now with this new era of automation and software-defined networking, Juniper's worth your look, because Juniper equipment is affordable and now it's accessible. So what I want to do is I want to spend some time now talking about the actual Juniper certification options that you have and what is really the essence of these exams. This is a huge deal when you're getting started with a brand new vendor like Juniper. And then I'll talk to you about how you can actually get started building your own Juniper lab. Let's go. So when you start wanting to get interested in Juniper learning, what you should do is, well, Google Juniper Learning. And what you find out is that Juniper has a learning portal called, well, Juniper Learning. Now, pivoting back to the main camera, first of all, your first stop for learning Juniper is on CBT Nuggets. I am recording brand new courses this year for CBT Nuggets, and I've already released 3 whole courses for the Juniper certification path. We're going to talk about those courses in just a second. This is just more or less the guide that I want you to focus in on. We're going to switch back to this camera. Okay, so let's take a look at what these certification paths are, and that's really right here under Learning Paths. So I give this a click, and this is really the certification paths that are available to you. Now, I'm going to focus in, first of all, right here. Do you see how we've got a few things that are going on here? We've got JNCIA Junos is the beginning for your enterprise or your service provider path. Interestingly, Juniper is very well known in the service provider world, and I don't know the metrics to this, but I'm going to guess that there are a very similar number of people pursuing the service provider path as they are the enterprise path. And it all starts for either service provider or the enterprise. It both starts with the JNCIA Junos. And I immediately want to talk about the JNCIA Junos. I first got my JNCIA Junos in 2016, and that exam was very much like, hello world, welcome to networking, let's talk about what subnetting is. I retook this exam in November, and they really overhauled this exam, and for the better. When I say this is about JNCIA Junos, I want you to focus in on what comes after. Actually, let me zoom in here. Let's zoom. There we go. That's better, isn't it? I want you to focus in on what comes after the hyphen here. After this hyphen is Junos. Notice this isn't like JNCIA networking. This is JNCIA Junos. The assumption for people who are taking the JNCIA Junos is you're relatively new to networking, but you probably know the OSI model at this point and maybe even have experience on another vendor's platform. Maybe even you have your CCNA or something. The JNCIA Junos is you're new to Juniper. You maybe know networking, but you're new to Juniper and you're starting off with a brand new operating system that does things differently. So the essence of the JNCIA Junos examination is to introduce you to how Junos does things, how to use the Junos operating system. Now, that's not to say there's not networking in it. There is. The JNCIA Junos focuses on layer 3, got it right in R there, layer 3 technologies. You'll learn about things throughout the certification path here. They tell you on the exam, you're going to learn about things like routing protocols, reading the route tables, understanding how these things come to life. But very coolly, you also learn about route policies on the Junos certification exam. This would be the equivalent to like route maps on Cisco devices. And there's a reason why they introduced that to you, at least. Look, let's bring up the actual certification. Let's bring it up. I'll quickly Google JNCIA Junos. We'll bring up the JNCP, Juniper Network Certification Program. I'll click on JNCIA. I know it's a different page that basically shows you the same thing. Here we go. Look, see the exam objectives? You got routing fundamentals, route policies, and firewall filters. This is kind of the equivalent to route maps and ACLs. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why would we learn route maps? That's like a CCNP level topic in Cisco world, because pretty much everything you do in Juniper, whenever you have to do some form of manipulation or traffic engineering, it all starts with a route policy. And it's honestly pretty cool when you understand how just to syntactically read a route policy. That's what they're trying to bring to the table in the JNCIA Junos. It's not so much about how do you do something crazy, it's more about can you just understand the flow and reading of a route policy. So they do ease you into it, which I think is really, really cool. And that's, gotta get back to my learning path here. That's what I think is really, really cool about the Juniper path here, is they do a great job of easing you into the technologies instead of just dumping a huge amount of information on many different random topics on you all at once. It is very targeted. I know that this feels like you're getting away from role-based certifications where, what does the modern network engineer do today? Let's cram that all into one certification. This does focus more on the technologies, but by breaking it down into 3 exams, or really 4 exams if you're going for expert, they do a really good job of easing you into it. So in the Junos certification exam, you're really focused on layer 3 technologies only as a way to acclimate yourself to the operating system. It does expect you to know a little bit of networking. This isn't like, are you brand new to networking? Welcome to JNCIA. That's not what it is. But then you shift up into JNCIS Enterprise or JNCIS Service Provider. Now, why are these 2 different exams? Because this is where we introduce layer 2 technologies, first of all, and the Enterprise focuses on VLANs and switching, whereas the Service Provider focuses on bridging technologies and how you can provide layer 2 connectivities for your customers. I think that's really, really cool. You cover things like Q in JNCIS Service Provider, as well as how to build out bridge domains, whereas in JNCIS Enterprise, it's more or less focused on how do you build out your layer 2 infrastructure and also secure it with layer 2 technologies. Notice that this JNCIS Enterprise is not only a prerequisite for JNCIP Enterprise, but also a prerequisite for JNCIP Data Center. So as before, you had a twofer, right? This one certification applied to both certification exams. Now you have this one certification, JNCIS Enterprise, that applies to 2 certification exams yet again. So that's pretty cool. Whereas the JNCIA, whereas when you go with the service provider, that takes its own dedicated path. Again, the service provider world is very, very popular in the Juniper world, and it should not be overlooked. The JNCIS service provider is a whopper of an exam. I think I took this one back in December, and it introduced MPLS in a way that really floored me. So in JNCIS Enterprise, you're heavily focused on spanning tree, you're heavily focused on VLANs and VLAN security. In JNCIS Service Provider, you're heavily focused on bridging and engineering MPLS solutions. So this is going to be using LDP, oh, got to write a P there, not an R, LDP, and RSVP with traffic engineering. Then you get into JNCIP Service Provider, and this is basically advanced IGPs, advanced BGP, and MPLS VPNs. And I mean deploying all of them. Layer 3 VPNs, Layer 2 VPNs, and that consists of BGP Layer 2 VPNs, LDP Layer 2 circuits, BGP signaled LDP Layer 2 circuits, VPLS and EVPN, and it feels like overwhelming. Like, how could I ever possibly learn how to do this? But this goes back to the original topic about route policies. Once you know how to deploy a route policy, the rest of it just kind of falls in place. And what you find out is a BGP Layer 3 VPN is almost identical to a BGP Layer 2 VPN. And then when you get into BGP signaled Layer 2 or LDP Layer 2 circuits, you're like, well, it's not that different either. So it's really just like a little bit of variations from one to the next, and it's actually really, really, really cool. I'm telling you right now, the MPLS VPN content that I'm recording, this may be the most fun I've ever had recording content ever, and I hope that it shows when it actually comes time to actually, watch these videos and you start to learn with us at CVT Nuggets. So up until this point, we've recorded and released JNCIA Junos, we've recorded and released JNCIS Service Provider and JNCIS Enterprise, and I am like 98% done with JNCIP Service Provider. I only have VPLS and EVPN left to do. I should have that done in the next 1 to 2 weeks, at which point I will be pivoting to JNCIP Enterprise, and then after which point I will be pivoting to JNCIP Data Center. Now, another cool thing that I want to point out is the amount of overlap in these certification exams. There is a decent amount of overlap between JNCIS Service Provider and JNCIS Enterprise. In Service Provider and Enterprise, you learn about OSPF, you learn about ISIS, you learn about BGP, you learn about spanning tree protocol. I mean, really, like 75 to 80% of the exam is an overlap between JNCIS Service Provider and Enterprise. And then I would go ahead and say that maybe 30 to 50% of the exam is an overlap between JNCIP Service Provider and JNCIP Enterprise. Up here, you have advanced OSPF, advanced ISIS, advanced BGP, advanced class of service, advanced multicast, and it's only when you start getting into switching technologies or MPLS layer, whatever, VPN, MPLS VPN, I should say, that's when they start to break apart from each other. Now, JNCIP Data Center is an entirely different beast in its own. If I jump back to this page here, where we were exploring certification exams, I can click on certification tracks. We'll jump back to JNCIP Data Center, and it'll show you like there's really nothing overlapping here. Here in JNCIP Data Center, like it's strictly data center, right? We're learning about layer 2 fabrics, layer 3 fabrics. Now, multi-chassis lag, I actually recorded that for JNCIS, so you can get started on that now if you want to. We've got VXLAN, EVPN, VXLAN signaling. Now, EVPN is on all of the JNCIP certifications, including JNCIP Service Provider. Then we've got data center interconnect, architecture and security, and deployment and management. Basically, this is saying design, is it not? That's what we're talking about here. So the data center certification track is an entirely separate exam on its own, but it is fed by the JNCIS Enterprise. So this is the plan for recording that I have in my near-term future. I would hope to have these done by mid-fall, hopefully by the beginning of football season. So then, once I've got this done, what comes next? We'll just look at it. We're going to read about it. Security. I want to do the security track. And then I want to finish up by bringing our DevOps track up to date. We do have a JNCIA DevOps course. They do have a newer version of the exam out. From what I can tell, there's a huge amount of overlap, so I think our JNCIA DevOps course is still relevant to today's technologies and today's certifications. And then I would love to do the design certification exam. Notice there is a JNCDA, but then there is a JNCDS for data center, service provider, and security. I think it's pretty interesting that there's not a JNCDS for enterprise. It's data center, service provider, and security. So there are just a huge amount of certification options for you when it comes to Juniper, and I really believe that it feeds well. I really believe that it goes from one certification to the next in a very logical manner. Now, jumping back to the main camera here. I will say this right now. There is a JNCIA Security. There is a JNCIA Cloud. There's a JNCIA DevOps. I would say do not take those until you've taken JNCIA Junos. Learning how to use the operating system of Juniper devices is a must before you talk about things like how do I automate Juniper devices, or how do security devices differ a little bit from, the enterprise switches or the enterprise routers. That's, you know what, beyond that, in the JNCIA stuff, I also talk about how to do things on the firewalls anyways. So you'll see like, okay, well, this is how the SRX firewall is a little bit different. So I would say no matter what, if you're new to Juniper, start out with the JNCIA Junos certification exam. It's one that you can get up and running with pretty quick. It's not a huge exam. It's something that you could do maybe. When I first took the JNCIA, I knocked it out in a week. When I refreshed myself back in November, I think I studied for it for about 3 days. But again, I've flown many thousands of hours on the Juniper operating system, so this was kind of a refresher. If you're brand new, it may take you a month and a half or so, but it's still one that you can knock out pretty quickly. So that's my recommendation if you're getting started with Juniper, which you should definitely start with a JNCIA Junos to learn about the Junos operating system. Then you can start to get into your specialization track with the JNCIS tiers, which is things like the JNCIS Service Provider, JNCIS Enterprise, or you go into things like the security track. But when you go into the security track, you have to start over with the JNCIA. Those are prerequisites. Each of those exams is a prerequisite for the next one. Other thing I'll say about Juniper certifications before we get into the lab work is you can take all of these exams, including the expert exams, at home. So that's super, super cool that if you are destined for your JNCIE, but you want to do it at home, you can. Very, very cool that they do that. Now, how do you actually get going learning Juniper certification, and how do you get going building a lab? Let's switch back to the other screen and talk about that. Well, obviously, I'm going to say you should get started with CBT Nuggets, right? So let's jump over to cbtnuggets.com. Nope, not studio. Yeah, Bob's recording some awesome content that I peer-reviewed yesterday. So if I sign into cbtnuggets.com, sign in with my account, if you just search for Juniper, well, you're going to find a lot of different offerings. The first thing you see is the JNCIA Junos, led by me. Then you see JNCIS Service Provider, led by me, and JNCIS Enterprise, led by me. These are big courses. Oh, there's also JNCIA DevOps right here, led by me and Ben. Ben's going to teach you some actual programmatic and programmability options for you too. So this is where you want to get started when it comes to learning videos. And I want to show you this too. Under the JNCIA Junos content, the very first skill we have is actually breaking down the certification paths, additional resources that you can use, and how to build labs. How to build a hardware home lab as well as a software home lab versus access online virtual labs. So let's get going. I'm just going to give you a crash course on how to build the hardware home lab. It all starts with eBay, doesn't it? For firewalls, the SRX series devices are what you want to use, and I really like the slightly more expensive SRX series 300, SRX 300 device. Now let me go ahead and tell you right now about the SRX 300. A lot of these small business devices, these small business firewalls, they have a very unique power plug that is required by the Juniper devices. So if you buy one of these devices off of eBay, make sure it comes with the power adapters. Otherwise, you're going to be scrambling trying to find a power adapter. You're going to have to go back to eBay and buy one that way. So I like the SRX Series 300 devices for firewalls. For switches, it's hard to beat the EX2200, especially the rack mount one. So there's the small business one that looks kind of like this. You can scroll down and they do make a rack mount switch. Look at this, the EX2200 device, 69 bucks. Pretty easy to get started with. That being said, the EX2200 devices are not... we didn't deploy very many EX2200s. Let me just put it that way. We deployed more like the 4000 series devices, like the 4600 or the 4200 devices. These will consume more power, but one of the cool things about Juniper devices is they have, if you see right here, I've kind of got it highlighted. They have this, hard to see. They have this LED screen. I know you can't really see me pointing, but there's an LED screen on the right-hand side of this device, and there's a menu that you can actually press buttons and navigate through. And if you ever get like really in a pickle or something, you can actually like restore like to your emergency backup config from this LED device. You can also factory default this device. If they ship it to you, if eBay ships it to you and it's not factory defaulted, you can factory default it from this LED screen. So I really like the 4200s just for that extra, little oomph to it. There's also, 48 port, it's got PoE, blah, 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 blah. So I like these devices, even though they're going to be a little bit louder, they're going to consume a little bit more electricity. So keep that in mind. Now, the 2200s and the 4200s are end of life. If you want something that is still supported today, just go up by 100 and look at the 2300s. So there's the 2300s. Yeah, they're going to be more expensive. The 4300s are going to be even more expensive than that, but these are what is supported today. Owning one of these devices will give you a serial number, and that will be a big deal when it comes time to building out your virtual lab. If I search for Juniper software downloads, I'll show you how you can get started building out your virtual lab. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise that I like to use EVE-NG. But a very cool thing about Juniper is they give you a virtual firewall, a virtual router that is service provider grade, and a virtual switch that is data center grade that you can download on a trial basis for free and spin it up in your lab environment. So here I am. If I just search for Juniper downloads, here I am. If you search for VSRX, that is a firewall. See VSRX evaluation? Boom, there it is right there. What you're going to be looking for is the KVM appliance, that QCOW2 file. That's what you want to use if you're going to be using EVE-NG. There is the VMX evaluation. That is the service provider router, and that is the majority of what I do my work on throughout our series of configurations within our Juniper playlists. Then there is the VQFX devices. These are the Juniper data center style switches. Now these are a little bit bigger to configure. So what you want to do is you want to create a Juniper account. It does help if you have a serial number, and then you want to download these. Now let me tell you right now, it's not just as simple as create an account and download these. Sometimes you have to actually be permitted permissions to download them. And what I had to do when I created my account is I had to request permissions to do that. And it's not a simple process. What I actually had to do is I had to click Get Support down here in the bottom right-hand corner and initiate a chat session in order for someone to approve my account to get these permissions. But it was just going back and forth with chat support until I actually got someone on the line. This is an automated bot. I got someone on the line, and after about 45 minutes to an hour of going back and forth with this chat support, my account was approved, and I was able to download all of these images, load them into EVE-NG, and then I had a virtual environment up and running. So let me show you. Let me show you what that looks like. If I go to 10, 10, 21, 28, that is my EVE-NG environment. And here we are. This is what it looks like from the EVE-NG plane. Now, this is the environment that I'm actually using for the MPLS VPN section of our JNCIP service provider content. You can see I've got some Cisco equipment on the edges, and I've got my Juniper devices here in the center. Now, I want to point this out. There are 2 devices required in order to bring a Juniper VMX router or a Juniper VQFX switch to life. Why are there 2 appliances required to do that in EVE-NG? You really need to watch the JNCIA Junis to find out. That is a big talking point in JNCIA, and we cover it extensively on the CBT Nuggets content. It'll make more sense, and you'll say, oh, that's actually really cool. I get why they do that now. So that's one thing you should know when it comes to building out a virtual environment, is that there are 2 appliances needed for the VMX router and the VQFX data center switch. The VSRX firewall is still just 1 appliance. So keep that in mind when you're building out your environment for the Juniper devices and even G. I highly recommend, considering they're free with a little bit of legwork, you should go ahead and get these appliances if you have the ability to do so. Now, last thing is the online cloud labs. What we're talking about here is the Juniper VLabs, where you can test drive equipment. Let me go ahead and get signed in here, and you'll take a look at how these Juniper VLabs look. Here's a standalone VMX router. I'll give that a click, and we'll say launch. And this is the sandbox environment for working with Juniper VMX routers. And it loads up, and if you're maybe using other vendors' lab environments, you're thinking, wait a minute, this looks really familiar. Who am I talking about here? Who did it first? I'm gonna guess that they actually bought some solution off the shelf, and all they were able to do was just rebrand the icons in the top left corner. Couldn't change the color schemes or something. I don't know. It just looks like we're using the exact same tool here anyways. So there is a way that you could use Juniper's online environments as well, using the Juniper VLabs to test drive some equipment like VMX routers, VSRX routers, or even some of their SDN solutions, which are pretty cool too. So this is how you can get started with the Juniper equipment, which I really, really love and highly recommend. I can't stress it enough. When I looked at what Juniper offers and all of the different certification exams, let me see if I can get back to them here. All of these different certification exams, and what did CBT Nuggets have at the beginning of this year? We had an old JNCIA Junos and an old JNCIS Enterprise, and that's it. And knowing what I knew, coming from the consulting world, working exclusively on Juniper, I just knew there was a missed opportunity here. So we reshot JNCIA Junos and JNCIS Enterprise. We released JNCIS Service Provider. We're about to release JNCIP Service Provider. Then I am dedicated to getting JNCIP Enterprise and Data Center out to you as quickly as possible before we... and we also had JNCIA DevOps. Don't forget that. Then we're going to get JNCIA... We're going to get the security track done, and we're going to get automation and DevOps done, and then maybe some design done. I want to make this the year of Juniper so that we build out this amazing product. They really do bring a great product and an affordable product for enterprises and service providers. They bring an incredible product to the table that is very, 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 very automation friendly. And it makes someone who's new to automation, they can ease into it even easier. But even if automation isn't your gig, this content is still really amazing. I mean, this is really, really good stuff, and it's worth your time to learn and get certified in. Trust me, big fan of what Juniper does, and I think we should spend more time as a networking community focused in on that. So that's what I've been up to. I apologize for radio silence for so long and not giving updates outside of Twitter, which I'm very active on. So if you're not following me on Twitter, make sure you get at that. So last thing I said, I wanted to bring up the Brave browser. This is just some lanyap. This is just for fun. Let's jump back to the screen. Yeah, I'm working on the Brave browser. And why do I like the Brave browser? Oh, let me clear the screen. It's because this is actually built kind of on a crypto, blockchain, cryptocurrency, whatever you want to call it, called Basic Attention Token. Now, I just discovered this yesterday, so my balance is 0. But if you opt in, like you can see right here, over here, these Brave rewards, right here on the screen, kind of circling it. There, you see these Brave rewards? If you click, they give you, if you opt in, they'll give you a system pop-up, like an operating system pop-up that's an ad. And the ads are actually pretty relevant. I haven't been hit with many bad ads so far. And if I click on it, then I get rewarded for it in the form of cryptocurrency. But this is where I think it gets really, really cool. As you then start browsing around to your favorite content creator site, like datanox.dev, let me go back here. There we go. You can see right here in this top right corner where my mouse is, if I click on it, it shows that I am a Brave verified creator. So I went through a verification process here, and now I'm a Brave verified creator. So as you browse my site or my Twitter account or my YouTube account, if you want, you can turn this off. You don't have to do this. The percentage of attention that you give to creators' websites, it rewards them. So some of your BAT, your attention token that you've accumulated, will be sent more or less as a tip to creators that you appreciate. Now, again, if you don't want to do this, you can just turn it off. You can just say, I don't want to give Knox anything. I just want to store my basic attention token for myself. And maybe after the fact, I'll send it to my Coinbase exchange and swap it for Ethereum or something like that. But if you do appreciate contributors, and this is not just like my website or YouTube or Twitter, there's also, I think this is a big one, GitHub. So if you go to github.com/datanox, for people whose contributions to open source community, you can give them some attention. And just by opting in and giving it a click, you accumulate some tokens. And once you've accumulated some tokens, then just by browsing some website, a little share of that token goes to the contributors that you appreciate. And I think that's really cool. It's a really cool thing that, you can do that costs nothing. And gives back to contributors. But again, if you don't want to give back to contributors, you can just turn that feature off and then just send the tokens to your favorite crypto wallets if that's if you're into this sort of thing, which I am. I think this is really, really cool. Beyond that, if you just hit the plus here, you see this is a privacy browser. Big deal here that they take privacy very seriously, and it's got ad blockers built into it. I've only started using this yesterday. It's blocked 2,465 trackers and ads. It saved me this much bandwidth and this much time in loading websites and stuff like that. So I think that's a really cool thing too, that this is all built into the browser. I have Brave running on my iOS devices, my cell phone, my iPads. It is a great browser on iOS too. Now, I'm not partnered with Brave. They're not paying me to do this. I just really, really like the product that they're bringing to the table, and I think it's cool, and I think more people should be using it. So that's what I've been up to. I've just been mostly dealing with the change in life that comes with bringing new life into this world. I'm so happy and I'm so excited. My family is healthy, and that is literally all I could ask for in this world. I have amazing support structure in place at CBT Nuggets. It is the best job, y'all. I could go on and on about CBT Nuggets. There's just no red tape at that job. It's just I can sit down, hit record, and just start talking. And I get to produce the content that I want to produce, that I feel is valuable to the world. So, massive kudos and shout outs to CBT Nuggets for being just such an incredible employer. So it is the year of Juniper. Whatever free time I've had has been dedicated to creating Juniper content. We've released 3 courses already. The 4th one is imminent. In the next couple weeks, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, I don't know. But it all depends on how I can get going with recording VPLS and EVPN. I hope to finish that up next week, but it may take a couple weeks. Anyways, JNCIP service provider coming very soon, so keep your eyes peeled. Enterprise coming after that, data center coming after that, security track coming after that, automation coming after that, and design coming after that. I really think this is worth your time learning about. So that's what I've been up to. I really appreciate you guys for hanging with me all this time, for helping me grow my channel, helping me grow my social media presence. I want to give more back to you, and I promise I will. Yeah, so it feels good to be back. It feels good to be back. I'm getting long-winded here, so I'm going to wrap this thing up and just say thanks for stopping by, y'all. I'll see you in the next one.